So today also we have some wonderful panel. We have a keynote address. We have got two beautiful plenaries and four parallel session. So, but today we will also be looking at what does the supportive ecosystem means. From homes to markets, from community, the systems of the state, and how do we respond to the needs. Some of the big questions that we need to ask, and also probably we would seek answer for that, would be what does it take to bring women into non-traditional livelihoods or into the workspace? How does home, community, states, market can be more supportive to women? What needs to be done in that regard? So we know that 90% women work in the informal markets or informal spaces. Can informal become formal? Should informal become formal? This is something that we need to look at. Also, this is about planning. So when we are looking in terms of planning of our cities, are we only looking at the lenses of the men? Where are women's voices? Where are women's need in that? This all is a big, these are the big questions that we must be looking at. So therefore today, the whole day is spread across this plenary. So the first plenary which will be here after some time, will be looking at the ecosystem building approach, where what are the synergies that are needed at various levels to sustaining women at the workplace. In the second plenary, we will be looking at the deliberating about the current market and the nature and the spaces that it offers to women. How can we create more gender sensitive markets, and that also listens to the voices of the marginalized. And that panel is also in a way quite unique. Deputy member of the IO, may I request Bindaji to come here. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much, and namaste and very good morning, everybody. I'm really very delighted to be here with all of you, and especially I'd like to thanks to the Azad family, Azad Foundation family, and then even the special thanks to go to Kamala Di, who make it possible to be here for me, and it will be the great opportunity to learn from all of you instead of just the sharing some of the experiences from my own country. We are just waiting for some of the technical things. Anyway, it is very good to learn from all of you, and then to share our experiences, how we are working in the especially in the South Asia, to encourage and involve more women in the non-traditional sector of the their working life. And I'm basically the trade unionist already mentioned, and previously I was a student activist. So 1980 to 1990 I was in the student movement. So then later on I moved to the women's movement. And while I was working with the women's movement, then I joined the trade union in 1993. So up to now, one way to another, I'm still the trade unionist. But the politics is the main thing to make a change. That's why I'm a part of the political movement as well. So we are combining all those different movements. Okay, so thank you very much. Because if I'll be speaking without any hands-out, it will be very difficult to manage the time. That's why I'm just trying to put some of the things, trying to make it little bit systematic in the PowerPoint presentation. So basically, when we talk about the women's participation in the different sector of the society and then the equality. So we are following this the empowerment process, and then we learned that the empowerment is the multidisciplinary process, and then in our context we are talking about the three areas: this the politics, economics, and the social cultural change. In the politics, we are giving the more emphasis on the participation, policy intervention, agenda setting, and enforcement. And then the economic side, this the participation in the productive work in public sectors, and then the equal share in the parental property right, and then the recognition of the recognition and the counting of the care of it is a most important while we talk about the women participation in the economic empowerment. And then the social cultural factors, especially in the South Asia, we need to change the way of our thinking, and we have to change our norms and values to the progressive way, and then changing the gender role and behavior. It is the most challenging things, and then dignify the reproductive gender role. Unless dignifying the reproductive gender role, it is very difficult to bring the women's in the public sectors and then dignify their life also. That's why basically when we talk about the empowerment in the process, empowerment is the process to enable a marginalized group to know, act, achieve, and then perform. So in short, we call this the CAP. So this is the strategy we are following now. And then in terms of the empowerment cycle, we are giving the emphasis on the the 5 things. First thing, that there should be the very clear policy, and then the policy should be accompanied by the strategy, and then the strategy should be translated into action plan, then the enforcement, and then the monitoring and the evaluation. Afterwards, we can review again the policy. So we have to follow this cycle, otherwise we'll be just talking. And then basically for this the empowerment, many countries nowadays we are talking about this the affirmative action. So in the affirmative action plan, there is also the 4 component we are talking. First thing is at least this the quota for the quantity. It means certain number of the women should be presented in the different sectors. So we call it is first thing, and then this is the basis to move towards the equality. And then the second thing, just the being a part of the organization or being a part of the structure, it doesn't make much change. That's why we need some additional program to make them more competent to intervene in the process. So that is the second. And then the third is the mentoring for changing the attitude. Only enabling the women in the different sector, it doesn't work unless changing the man's way of thinking and doing, and their involvement as well. So that is the basis for that. So first we have to try to change the attitude, both men and women also. And then the fourth thing is this is the modeling for the changing behavior. So the man and the women, both, they have to present themselves as a model in the process of the change. So in our context, we are talking about the 4 component while we talk about the affirmative action. So basically we are focusing more about the participation. So only the participation doesn't make much change. So that is our experiences said in our context. So when we talk about the strategy for women leadership, this is our experiences from my own trade union. Because when I joined the trade union movement formally in 1993, little bit I was engaging already after the 1990 movement. So in the 1992, Women Association and the trade union, we jointly organized the program, and then we discussed what should be the strategy. Then we decided that if we really want to develop the women leadership within a trade union, we should have a separate women structure. That's why we formed the Central Women Workers Department as part of the trade union movement. And then through this the Central Women Workers Department, we started to organize the different affirmative action to lead the women leadership within a trade union movement. Then when we work within our organization for 8 years, then we realized that only the one trade union organization developing the women leadership and then having some affirmative action, it doesn't make much change in the society. That's why in 2000, we come together with the different trade union center and we form Trade Union Committee for Gender Equality and Promotion as a wider network among the different trade unions to work on the women workers issues. Then during that time, we did research what are the gaps in the policy and laws regarding the male and female while we talk about the gender equality. Then we come up with the 10 gender agendas at the workplace. So it was a common gender agenda. While we identify this, the 10 gender agenda among the trade union, then we sit together with our employer association and then the government also. Finally, we come up as a common gender agenda at the workplace. This is the state level. This is the tripartite committee of the government, employer, and the employee. We decided that, and then we work on that. Finally, arriving at this stage, most of those issues have been responded by the government policy. And in 2006, when there was a second people's movement, that time we joined hand with the other mass movement also, because only the workers, women in the working sectors, it is not possible to make much change. Then after having this, the 2006 successful movement, then we came together with the women's movement, student, youth, peasant, all of them, we join hand with them and to uplift the participation and equality in the national scenario. That is the result. In 2008, we got at least the 1/3 women participation in the Constituent Assembly, and then it makes remarkable change in our country. So we started from trade union, but we expanded the network among the all sectors of the society, and then the 2008 to 2015, continuously with this wider network, we continue campaign ensuring the gender equality in the new constitution. So it was our strategy to address this women's agenda and others. And then the major achievement, what we achieve now, in terms of the participation, at least the 1/3 women in the federal and province level, and then the 40% plus in the local level. This is the ensured women participation in the elected body. And the second is this the equal right in the ancestral property. Third is special provision in the all these are the I am talking about the constitution. This the education, health, employment, and social security. There can be the special provision and special program regarding the women's empowerment. And this the work regarding the workers' right. So dignified labor practices and social security for all workers, including informal sectors. It includes even the domestic workers, and the fundamental workers' right for all workers, formal and informal sectors, including self-employed, and right to employment and the unemployed allowances. So this is the new things we have been able to include in the constitution. And then recently we have already adopted some of the related laws also, and then we are in the process to implement all this provision. And then the recognition of the care work under the state policy. It is the most important while we talk about the women's right and then women's value of the women's work. And this the major achievement changing scenario is especially focusing on the working sectors. This is the skilled workers in the construction sectors. Now this is the mason, electrician, painters, etc. Especially we translated this the big challenge of the earthquake in 2015, not the 2012. While there was a big earthquake, then we have a scarcity of the male skilled human resources, and then the many women they join the training. Now over the country we can find the women's mason, electrician, and painters. So the women they can build the country. So this is the new area the women's they are moving. And another is this the driving. Actually, it is already about the 2 decades. The women they are driving this 3-wheeler, but since last decades, the women they are moving to the 4-wheeler now. And then now even the women they have started to drive the taxi, and then most of the women they are working in the different embassy and other those kinds of international agencies, because those people they feel women's driving is more safer than man. And then even the traffic record also say that, not only our claim, there is a fact. And nowadays even the big bus, mini bus, and micro bus, all everywhere the women's they are moving in those sectors. And then it is not only women's moving in those sectors, and then the women transferring their area of work. Even it helped to change the gender perspective towards women. So the women can do everything, and while they will be driving in the public sector. Similarly, in the trekking and auto mechanic sectors also there is a women. And then now this auto mechanics workshop, it is being run by the women. And in the trekking sectors, I think one of our sisters, she is also from here, from the trekking sectors, and they are running the entrepreneurship also. And not only in the other these kinds of working sector, even in the professional. And now the more women they want to join the civil engineering. And then while we talk about the legal sectors, now it is very encouraging that more than 60% of the law students they are the women. And not only they are joining, even the top 10 majority of the girls. So it is very empowering things for us. And then we are just expecting that maybe the next 1 decade we can have a lot of very qualified and very competent lawyers to defend the Nepali, the people's right. And this another in the media is very powerful, and then increasing the women participation in the media sectors also. And even the women they are running many online, and then the FM radios and other themselves as well. And then in the parliamentary committee, we have 16 parliamentary committee. Out of them, 9 committee it is chaired by women this time, and it is a very big achievement. And compulsory women either chief or deputy chief in all the elected body. We have 761 elected body, 753 in the local level, 7 provincial, and then 2 in the national level. Every structure should have at least 1 woman, either chief or deputy chief. So it is politically it is a big achievement. And then not only that, we are lobbying to have more women in the political party. So now we have already passed the laws. Every level of the political parties, they should have at least the 1/3 women participation in their committee, elected committee. So maybe the next 2 or 3 years, every party we can see this much the women. And then the challenges, still we have lot of challenges. So first challenge is the proper enforcement of the constitution and the laws, especially the measuring the domestic care work, enrolling informal sector workers under the contributory social security, because we have a law and we have started a scheme, but how to enroll them, it is one of the challenges. And the enforcement of the property right and the special provision of the employment. And the citizenship matter is still a big challenge, and we are fighting. Currently the bill is in the parliament and we are fighting for that. And in conclusion, we have passed the century of the women's movement. So the century-long social movement has given good achievement. And the networking among the political, civic, community, and the working people movement is the key to achieve, act, and move ahead. And the gender sensitizing from the family, community, social movement and the state and involve them in the social cultural transformation process. Practically is the big challenging job, and it is very necessary if we really want to achieve something in the reality and tangible way. And the motivating the new generation to act as a change agent is the essential. Because if we will be just talking about our generation or the old complaining the old generation, we cannot move ahead. So if there is something lacking in our generation, we have to target to the new generation, and we have to move. We have to, the mentoring them, and we have to make them the social change agent. That is the way we are working, and then we hope we can still move forward. And then if there is something lacking, many my sisters and brothers from my country, they are also here. Maybe later they can also join. So thank you very much for hearing me and this opportunity.
Thank you, Vidyaji, for the forward-looking address. May I request my colleague to for your token of appreciation. This is a store and a lady driver book which is being published by Jaban. This has the stories of 11 amazing women. So there are a couple of things. First of all, the whole program schedule is available at the registration, and you can request our colleagues here to hand it over to everyone, so you can have a look at what is happening, which session, where. So the program schedule is available. Please have a copy of that. It will navigate. You may want to choose your session for the parallel session. That's available there. And I just wanted to also highlight that yesterday we had an amazing media coverage. So most of the big newspapers have spoken about it. They had the stories of these women, and the conference has been received very well in the media. So congratulations. And I also want to just briefly highlight that we had this feedback yesterday. I think some of you have given the feedback. We would request you to please also give us the feedback on the sessions, on the content, from plenary to parallel. So yesterday the feedback those came, which were rating close to 4.5 in plenary and on the parallel session. We also had this feedback that we need to build in more time to be able to have more discussion, especially during the parallel session. We will try to incorporate it today. So that's what. Now let's move. I have this pleasure to introduce Ms. Archana Dwivedi. We are moving to the plenary session. Archana is moderating this session. She is the Deputy Director of Nirantar, a well-known organization that works on education. She has a vast experience of working in education and gender. Her major involvement over the years has been in researching and writing on issues of women empowerment and young people's education and empowerment for feminist perspective. With Archana, we have got an amazing panel from Mary Mwangi from Flown Initiative, Kenya. May I welcome you as well. Nandita Shah from Akshara. Hope Chiguru from Zimbabwe, Women Resource Center Network. Please come give them. And Gary Baker from Promundo, USA. And we have got Shweta Jain from Yvonne Foundation, if she is there. Shweta is there. Swati Jain, I'm sorry, Swati Jain is supposed to be here. Okay, so Swati will be joining us quick, so welcome to all of you. Over to you.
Thank you, Srinivas, and thank you Azad Foundation, NTL Network, to give me this opportunity to be able to speak and also to moderate this really, really exciting session. And I also feel very, very important session. Ecosystem approach is something which is, if I may say, is really core to the entire thing, and especially in context of non-traditional livelihood. But I would say it actually cuts across any change that we want to bring in society. The approach has to be ecosystem approach. I mean, we have seen it in so many areas, whether it is in context of domestic violence or for education for girls. Wherever we want to bring the structural change which is sustainable and of permanent nature, we have to make changes in every component of the society. Just changing one aspect of it is not going to really make a difference. And ecosystem approach, I also feel, becomes important in the context where the analogy comes from the space where it is about the interdependence of every aspect of the nature and how it can impact each other very grossly, but at the same time each and every component of it important in itself also, which might actually mean strengthening one component will essentially influence the other component also. And in terms of non-traditional livelihood, we are here talking about the ecosystem where a lot of institutions are involved. Yes, welcome Swati, please do join. So we have, that's why we also have a panel which will represent a lot of these institutions and the exciting and very, very challenging work that each of them are doing. And we will also try to talk not just about what we have managed to do, but also what are the challenges in doing what we are doing and what are the ways forward. So what are the exciting opportunities also that we are envisaging in context of the work that we are doing. So I was thinking, can we start in the same row as we are sitting? Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. I'll quickly share with you how we are planning so that we have more time for the interaction and also have more questions and discussions from the floor. We will give 5 minutes to each speaker to talk about your work, the experience of working on any of the institutions that you are in, that you are working upon. And after that we will have a round of question answer where we will go deeper into your work and see really what are the challenges and opportunities that are emerging, and then we'll open it for the floor to contribute. And I was also thinking that instead of just restricting ourselves to the questions that we are asking to the panelists, we have some of the core institutions and the work around them represented at the panel. But everyone, please contribute more what you think are the other aspects or the components that we have to talk about to really bring this ecosystem approach in its true spirit, and what are the other components that we have to add to make it truly ecosystem which will bring all around sort of a change. So that's how we can have this discussion. So we will start with Mary Wangi. Am I pronouncing it correct? Mary Wangi is working towards ending violence against women and girls in public spaces by influencing behavioral change. Mary, you have 5 minutes to give us a little more about your work, and then I'll speak more about your work after your presentation and start with a question.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. From where I come from, we also say habari asubuhi, meaning good morning. And then you say mzuri or mzuri sana. So like I'm very well or I'm well. Yes? Yes. So as Archana has said, my name is Mary Mwangi. I am from a place called Kiambu in Kenya. I work with the matatu industry. And as she has also said, our main goal is to create safe spaces for women and girls, both women working in the public transport as well as women who commute using public transportation. The organization was initiated informally in 2011 and officially registered in 2013. And our main work was working with drivers and conductors of matatus. These are three-wheeler minivans back in Nairobi. For those who have visited Kenya, I hope you've had a chance to experience the matatus. And the reason why we were working with them is because there were increased cases of stripping of women who were using public transportation in the year 2013 and in the year 2014. And so the initiative was formed as a way of responding to such cases. And what we did is we formed a program called Usalama wa Umma in Swahili. It's also called Public Safety in English. And the aim of the program was to train public transport operators on how to prevent sexual harassment in the public transport spaces, as well as to train them on customer service. How do they relate to those that they work with? And then also to train them on personal and professional development. There was a lot of work that went into developing the program, but the goal of the program was to help create ambassadors by creating behavior change towards treatment of women. And it's during the implementation of this program that entailed training that we realized there were very few female drivers and conductors that participated in these workshops. And what we did is we gathered about 18 women, drivers and conductors across Kenya, because there are very few of them, so we had to mobilize and get the 18 of them. And the reason for the mobilization was for us to conduct a needs assessment to understand what it is like for a woman working in the normally referred to as mud industry. And after sharing the experiences, we realized that there was need to create a network to support women working in the matatu industry, and thus the birth of Women in Transportation program. So far, the program through the program, we've been able to conduct several capacity building workshops, not trainings to enable them to drive, but trainings to help them survive in the male-dominated industry. We've offered them basic trainings such as first aid skills. We've also trained them on the BRT system, the Bus Rapid Transit system, and opportunities that are there for women and how they can grab those opportunities. We've also trained them on financial management, and we've also trained them on reproductive and sexual health, among many other training. So one of the successes that we've had is in Uganda. In 2017, we got a chance to be invited by a trade union in Uganda called ATEGU to do the same training to them. And as we speak today, the women in Uganda who work in the matatu industry, they have formed a women-led savings and credit cooperative that they are now operating. The other thing that we did through the training is we have created a network of women where they are able to share their daily experiences through WhatsApp. So every day women update each other on what their experiences are, what's happening in the industry, and if there is any one of them who want to join the industry, then these women have formed a support mechanism to support each other, know which public transport organization to join. We call them SACCOs, and also what are the systems or what is the procedure that one needs to follow to join the industry. And our main goal is to create an environment where we attract women into public transportation, and not just attracting, because we have noticed that some come and then go because the conditions of working in the industry are quite tough. So we've also focused also on retaining them as well as promoting them in the industry, because one of the issues that they also raised during the needs assessment was public stigmatization. They receive a lot of stigma from family, from friends, and even from us as commuters. And what we've been doing to try and curb that is there is a storytelling workshop that has led to them sharing their stories, and also created a play by Matatu women to showcase to members of the public to help them understand what it is like for a woman working in the Kenyan Matatu industry. And we hope that us as commuters, I'm referring to us as commuters, as well as the government, will be able to support them to be better at what they do. It's tough. Most of the time I tell them that they are my inspiration. I don't think I have the guts that the women have. Each and every time that we sit with them and share with them, I end up being encouraged and even inspired to do more. And later I'm going to talk about the initiatives that we have put in place in terms of moving forward, in terms of moving from a micro approach of supporting women to a more macro approach, where we are developing a gender-sensitive toolkit to create an enabling environment for these women. I will be, if you need any more information about researches that we have conducted, you are very much welcome to talk to me later, and I can share that because it's exciting information. Just to share with you a little bit, if I have time, is sadly in Kenya, the matatu industry on a daily basis brings in about $500,000 US gross revenue on a daily basis. Unfortunately, only 2% of women work in the industry as either drivers, conductors, or stage girls, or in other very low level in the industry. And also, sadly also, is that only 1% of these women are in managerial positions. That is, either they own a matatu or are either as part of the SACCO board. And unfortunately, also those who are in the SACCO board work there as SACCO secretaries. Yes, so there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. We need a lot of support. We are trying to create partnerships to help us create an environment that will be conducive for these women. Unfortunately, back home, this is an industry that is forgotten. Some people would even prefer to have the industry scrapped off. Unfortunately, it also employs a lot of women. For those who are in a parallel session, women like Elizabeth, women who depend fully on public transportation. And out of those women, our research stated that over 94% of them have children under 18 years. So that means they have children to feed, children to clothe, and children to take to school. And most of them are also single mothers. So we cannot afford to close our eyes on the need to create a safe and professional industry and a safe environment for these women. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mary. That was really inspiring. And really, when we talk of the public places, it's not just about the hardships and the difficulties, we are also talking about the terms. And as a feminist, I have no qualms in accepting that the public spaces are so masculine. So you're not actually dealing with the system which is difficult to access and approach. We are actually dealing with the structure. I would invite, I'm breaking the sequel, and can I now invite Gary Vargas President and CEO Promundo. Gary is the founder member of Men Care, a global campaign to promote men's involvement as equitable, non-violent caregivers, and co-founder of Men Engage, or Global Alliance. A lot of us know, I guess, which has more than 700 NGOs and UN agencies working towards gender equality as part of this network. So, are you ready? I mean, sorry if you were not. Like a lot of us are like, you know.
You woke me up. All right. Good morning, all. No, it's okay. Thank you. As Oksana said, I'm the founder and director of Promundo. We've been working, starting off in Brazil and then now in about 20 countries where we partner and with 4 offices, trying to bring men into this revolution in the lives of women and into gender equality. How do we change the social norms about it? How do we change the narratives about what it means to be men? And how do we bring men to be full allies for women's full empowerment? And I think a lot of our work, and many of you in the room probably face similar issues, is that we've been celebrating lots of individual women who have broken through the glass ceiling, and maybe a handful of men who have been allies or champions, as we call them sometimes in the work. And increasingly we know that that's necessary, but not nearly enough. And so I think the approach of this session of saying, what are the ecosystems? What do we need to do to achieve the big change? Much of Promundo's early work started in violence prevention, and we're not done with that. We know the huge numbers of women's experience of violence in the home and in public spaces. We know how violence between men and by men against boys and other forms of it is often a driver of men's use of violence against women. But we also knew that we had not done nearly enough on the issue of care work. And particularly that if we had this global ambition that women were going to be and should be 50% of everything, that men and boys needed to do 50% of the caregiving. Now, when we started the Men Care campaign in 2011 with that modest goal, we were met, and still are, with a lot of, "Are you crazy?" And a lot of shrugs and a lot of, what kind of funny things have you been smoking or thinking about? Because we don't really believe that the world could shift so that men and boys could do half the caregiving. We've always believed that needs to be an ecosystem, system, structural approach. And maybe we need, let's start with just how big the challenge are. I think you have in the publication here that the World Bank says women on average are doing 2.8 times the amount of caregiving. Actually, more recent data suggests it's even bigger than that. It's 3.3 times the amount. And we must also be honest that this region of the world has the worst imbalances. Women are doing 6.5 times the amount on a daily basis, the hands-on care of children and the care of our homes. And there's been very little evidence that that's shifting at any speed that matters enough for the lives of women as much as we've seen. We also know that 90% of men in this part of the world, and about 3/4 in many other parts of the world, think that women's main roles are to care for the home. That's first and foremost. And even when we ask men about their roles of being fathers, the vast majority say the most important thing I can do is be the breadwinner, be the financial provider. So we're faced with this very big wall that says caregiving is women's work and men do the stuff outside the home. How do we shift that? And that's where we come to looking at a systems approach. I'm not putting these necessarily in any order, but kind of several things that we're trying to do to shift this. One, we believe very much that we must start early. So much of our socialization of boys and girls in the home has our daughters already doing the caregiving, preparing them for a life of being caregivers, and we send our boys to do the other stuff, to do errands, to play, to not have many responsibilities at all. We're planting very early the seeds of just reproducing this idea of what we think men and women, boys and girls should do. So one is thinking about how we start early. I saw that we have a session in the afternoon about the school setting. That's one of the places. But certainly, what do we see in the home? Second, we've got to trouble and think about the care professions. if we're doing in this conference and lots of other spaces the importance of women in men-dominated spaces, we also need to think about how we bring men into care professions. Nursing, early childhood care, primary school teachers, the care professions continue to be largely women's work, which is great on the one hand. It's a source of work for many women. But we know we keep reinforcing this idea that this is lesser work, it's lesser paid, it's lesser seen in the world as being important. We need to figure out how to bring men into those spaces. Third, the issue of there's no way to do this. This is not just about a few men doing a few more hours at home in terms of the care work. We know that this is integrally connected to poverty and to livelihoods overall. We can't do this without connecting it to social protection policies and making sure we have access to dignified livelihoods. Whatever else we talk about, we do have to think about, whether it's cash transfer programs or other kinds of services, how do we make sure that families have this support? We're doing a review at the moment for the Swedish, or together with the Swedish government, of social protection policies globally, particularly those that are focused on women's empowerment, which the majority of them are. And of about 150 that we've looked at, fewer than 10 have actually looked at the issue of changing the care dynamics in the home. And of those, only 3 have actually had the goal that men could do more of the care work. So even when we set up huge cash transfer programs, which are being heralded as one of the best forms of social protection, even as we continue to focus on that cash going to women, we're not doing much of anything to change care dynamics in the home. And number 4, and I've got 1 minute here, number 4, of course, is access to childcare that is subsidized or paid for or provided by the workplace or by the state. We know that the informal systems, as functional as they are, and as much as they've made it possible for so many families to thrive, continue to reinforce the idea that the poorest women in homes or outside of homes continue to do care work. We need child care that is paid. I think increasingly we'd like to see it in workplaces so that men are also part of seeing that it's not some magic fairies who do the care of children while we're away, but it's done around us by people whose lives we appreciate and also care for. I think in parts of the world we need paid leave. That certainly works in some parts of the world where more of the population is working in a paid formal workplace. It can work. I know there's a lot of skepticism that men will actually take the leave and use it. That's been the same skepticism 40 years ago in Scandinavia, 20 years ago in Brazil, that men will actually just be another child who needs to be cared for at home. We've got, and that leads me to the last point, which is the social norms. Clearly, we've also got to change how we view how men and women see their roles in society, and we've not done enough push still on the social norm part of helping men and boys grow up seeing that our jobs, as much as anything else, is also to be caregivers. That's not an optional thing. 80% of men in the world will be or are biological fathers. All of us have someone that we care for. This can't just be something that a few, in quote, good men do. But we have to really change the dynamic so that all men see ourselves as part of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary, and that was really, really very important issue that you talked about. That yes, the vacuum that is created when women are leaving home, then nobody is coming back to the home to take care of what they have been doing for ages, without complaining, without getting anything in return, except sometimes some acknowledgement and love sometimes also. So we really have to shake the system. I mean, if I can speak for India, it's primarily women replacing women in care. Of course, when we have domestic help, they do get paid, but of course, even those terms and the payments are not enough the way our domestic help industry, so to call, is organized. So yes, that really brings us, and again, it's a upper middle class phenomenon. What about women or working class? They have nobody to replace, so it is double burden of work that Even when they are not going for any NTL, they are still working. I mean, a lot of women who are in unorganized sector working class women, they have nobody to replace them or do anything what they have been doing. So it does need that kind of an engagement. It is a very important area of work for all of us to really look at. So now I can invite Nandita, Nandita Shah, because Nandita is going to talk about the state, what Gary also in a way indicated, that it is also state's responsibility. It can't be an individual personalized choice, but what is the state's responsibility here? Nandita is co-director Akshara. Akshara is a women's resource center which is located in Mumbai, and it's a non-profit organization. She has more than 30 years of experience in strengthening women's movement. She is part of women's movement, and she has her contributions ranging from local level work till the international. So yes, Nandita.
Thank you very much, and it's really exciting to be here and to talk our experience in the women's movement, where we've always worked and raised issues in a way about larger ecosystem, but when we're doing it in a particular way in relation to work, and I think what Binda was saying in the keynote, I think that she brought out that unless we have this very large way in which we're going to bring ecosystem in every aspect from different points of view, so whether it's a trade union raising it, whether it's the women's movement raising it, unless we're able to bring that level of pressure, things are not likely to change for us. And I think the whole idea that women's movement has been talking about, and especially in relation to young women, is to say we're fighting against the freedom of, I mean, we want to get away from the fear that we are facing, fear of being in the street, but also fear of taking up anything new. And that's what Gary was saying, that not only with men that we have to start young, even with women we have to start young, because that fear is there in us any step we take, and that's what all of us are fighting about. But the idea of multiple interrelated intervention is where we feel that we are locating our work, and that's happening at multiple levels. So we are saying that we need to talk about what Floan spoke about, the whole issue of mobility, the issue of livelihood, resources, education. We are talking about what kind of opportunities women should get, and what about leisure, because a lot of time in our deciding to get fighting, we kind of not taking the idea that women also need to have the idea of leisure. And we are saying that all this has to be done at individual, family, community and state level. What I'm going to focus now in this 5 minutes that I have is an effort to bring this kind of an agenda at the state level that we try to do in Mumbai as many women's organization in a platform that we created of architects, urban planners, many other kinds of women that came together to say that we really need, unless infrastructure in cities and towns and in our villages don't incorporate women's understanding, experience, and not only just their practical part of their life, but some kind of strategic thinking on the issue of how do we bring women on board and change their lives, we are not going to be able to change. So what really helped us, and we fought for almost 3.5 years, and things were not moving, even though we have a 20-year vision document gets created by every city, most of the cities, and there's a whole process of engagement, sometimes with citizens, but otherwise just the planners sit and plan the city. And we kept saying, where are the women in that? And every draft that came up, like we've been actually, even in 91 we fought for it, but now in 2014 when they were drafting the next 20-year vision, we were saying, where are the women in it? And it's that kind of a process, by saying that where are the women in workforce, that somewhere they kind of shifted, and today we are able to get them to accept whole inclusion of gender within the development plan of Mumbai. They are recognized for the first time in the history of the country. A gender chapter has been introduced, and they have brought out the idea that men and women experience cities differently. And I think this is an important part. As a women's organization working with individual women, we also look at how we can bring the state and use all our ability to mobilize different perspective and different young women, older women, to raise the issue of how are we incorporated in city planning. Because we find that infrastructure changing is a very critical part, because it stays there forever. It's there for a long period of time. What we created, it's at least going to be there for 100 years. So what is it that we can demand, and what our whole effort in that process was, what are the big challenges that working women face in accessing job but also in retaining job. And where we tried to bring in was, in a city like Mumbai, a single woman cannot rent a house. It's the biggest challenge that you have because of the societal norms, what single women are going to do. Like, even when you're paying very high rent, there are societies where will ask you not to bring male friends at home. There are societies where asking you to say, leave your shoes outside so that they know who is coming to your house. And I'm sure some similar things are going to be also there in Delhi. So we said the biggest challenge was housing for women, and we demanded multi-purpose rental housing, which also includes women's shelter in emergency, and in the idea that women, when they are in distress, there is no place for them to go, at least in city of Mumbai. So we've demanded a kind of place which allows for multi-purpose way in which women's housing can be taken care of. We have demanded skill centers, we have demanded care centers, and this was a challenge that, just before coming, I and Gary were also discussing, that the care is the biggest problem for women to be retained in workforce. And most of the places in workforce, when we demand, they are saying, okay, 30 women are there, they will provide a creche. We are saying, even if 30 men are there, they are also fathers. Let's have workplaces, per se, having 30 workers, have a care center. But from the state, we demanded that we want care centers in neighborhoods. And in every ward now, we have been able to get 3 to 4 centers in every ward in the city of Mumbai, which is nothing. But at least it's a beginning to say that the government has allocated land for something like that. We are saying that what about skill centers? We have a huge kind of a national skill development processes going on. But what is the gap that we have seen that women being able to get into those skill center and get jobs and retain themselves in jobs? So what are those kinds of spaces, marketing spaces for women to be able to sell their stuff? We've also spoken about hawking and what kind of right hawkers have, because most of the time when hawkers have a better place, they redo it in their development plan, women are out because they are not given that kind of space. So what kind of marketing space can we be given? Even the idea of public toilet, like we have something called Right to Pee as a campaign where a lot of us are together, and we are demanding that public toilets be available, but a lot of times public toilets can also be spaces where you can change clothes, where you can have lockers. There are many such experiences have been done in many other countries like South Korea and all. How can we improve on those kinds of things? And we are saying even homeless shelters, a lot of time homeless shelters don't have it for single women, and how can we create spaces for the city to have that kind of thing? And I don't know whether I have time, 1 minute. Okay, so the idea of what was spoken by Flown in terms of safety, we also feel that we need to create the state to have a better emergency response system that needs to be created. And what we have tried to do in a city of Mumbai is to tie up with the police and say, can we have a better response system? So on one hand, we are saying infrastructure needs to change. On the other hand, we are saying that every service has to have a response system which will allow women to be responded in a positive way, and that means a lot of change has to happen in those system itself. So that is the kind of challenge that we as women's movement need to take up while we are working on building the strength of people and young women especially, and changing the young men. Unless we try and bring some of these larger challenges in our work, we will not be able to really get a long-term change in lives of women. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita. That was a very promising experience sharing and really giving us a lot of hope that, of course, work has to happen at that level only. Just this individual tinkering is not enough to really have that kind of an ecosystem change that we are working towards. And I was also thinking maybe NTL is the game changer. But we are not here only to bring more women into the game. We are here to change the rules of the game itself. So, and I think that is why we are talking about the ecosystem approach, where we change everything structurally, fundamentally, and bring women's experiences and voices in it, what Nandita was exactly talking about, into the whole system, rather than bringing women in the same system and playing by the rules. Which are, of course, established in certain way. With that, we invite another very exciting speaker. Sorry, just 1 second. Hope Chiburu. She is co-founder Zimbabwe Women's Resource Center and Network, and she will share with us her experiences as feminist activist and development practitioner who has worked in various spheres of women's lives. And she has authored many, edited many books on governance, civil society, gender, African sexualities and development. Welcome, Hope, and yeah.
Thank you. Namaste. How many of us are really happy at work? When you wake up in the morning and you say, "Oh, I'm going to work." I know you won't say because you are very smart. And how many of us wait at the gate and say, "Oh my God, there is the gate again." Anyway, we won't say again. But workplaces can really be exciting, they can be interesting, but they can be centers of power, they can be centers of struggle, they can make us happy, they can make us sick. So when we talk about building an infrastructure, enabling, we are not just talking about people who work in hardship, areas, or who work in male-dominated areas. Even in the women's movement, we chew each other. And when we finish chewing each other, we chew ourselves. And eventually we start diminishing and we start castigating everyone except us. And then eventually we say, but me too. So today I want to share the story of Ankita, who works as a carpenter in a mainstream organization. She's one woman among 20 carpenters. Every time she's going to work, she waits at the gate and is afraid because her work involves climbing. She has to climb using ladders. And every time she's climbing, there is a man peeping and trying to see, as if you can see anything, because she wears trousers, and trying to see, what is there, teasing her. And after that, they say, we peeped. And every day there is a story of peeping. We peeped. We peeped. We know everything now. She dreads going to work because of those jobs. She dreads going to work because during break, she doesn't know where to sit and who to sit with. She's teased endlessly. If she sits with a man, it's like, maybe it's that one. They tell her she'll never get married. They tell her she's become a man. They say all these things that are meant to put her down. Not that there is anything important about becoming a man, but they do tease her about that. They tease her because she's single, as I've said. They tease her because, it's like, couldn't you have found a better job? So what did Ankita do? worked with an NGO to form a support group of women carpenters. They started getting together, and in getting together, they started sharing their experiences, telling their own stories, finding their voices. You know how important it is to find your voice so that your story is not told by someone else, or you don't read someone's script. And as they shared their stories, they found commonalities. One of the things they did was create well-being centers, their own ashrams, their own kind of ashrams. In these ashrams or well-being centers, they started recovery. They were detoxing patriarchy. Detoxing patriarchy, detoxing fear, detoxing masculinity that they had kind of internalized, and trying to create a new way of being. Have I finished my time? Okay. So they tried to find their own way of being, and they found strength within. That strength within, they used to build a collective, not just a collective, but a political collective, where they started moving as a movement and really empowering themselves and saying that even if I go, I'll be very strong. The support was emotional, it was physical, but it was also intellectual. Because even if you're a carpenter, you're not going to die a carpenter. You get ahead, you must advance, you must do other things. So they created reading centers, they created advancement centers, and they needed someone to support this. In short, they created their own happiness. Happiness is a major resource where we work. Because without happiness, we get tired, we start diminishing instead of expanding, and in the process of doing that, we start deciding who we are. So happiness is not by the way, it's the work that we do, and we have support women, where they are. Another organization that I know, and it's led by Fiore, there at the back, at 3 p.m. every afternoon, they stop and dance for 5 minutes. She's a dancer. They don't only stop and dance, but they have invited well-being people to be part of their program. So what have we learned? Happiness is the real work. If you are not happy, quit. If you can't quit, find a support group so that you fight unhappiness. And create a happiness manager, someone who will remind you that you need to be happy. And then forget for it, because that which is not budgeted for eventually dies. So we need to have organizations with a soul, organizations that feed us, make us happy, no matter where we work. But this is a case study, and if you want to share it, you can talk later. She's eyeing me very, very, very badly. So I'll stop here, and thanks very much.
Thank you for bringing so much happiness. So with that happy note, and yes, of course, energy and positive energy is really very core to the change, and that's, I think, also we are talking about the feminist values informing the whole working style and how we visualize organizations. Yeah, do they chew or they allow us to expand? Absolutely. Now I call upon Swati Jain, and she really represents one of the important pillars of our society now, which is profit-making sector, which is of course a big consumer also of people's labor, and now growingly becoming a consumer of women's labor. Swati is Director of Marketing with Avon. Avon is a profit-making company which produces women's products to provide, and of course because Avon is that chain of things where women are, where women get the employment sitting at home. Yeah? Okay. I know about it. So, and Swati has been part of this industry for 19 years, and quite looking forward to your experiences, Swati.
how women are managing both the worlds.
Hi, good morning everyone. You know what, when I was listening to all these people, I felt that I'm in a good place. Somebody will take care of me in future. I've been part of the industry for 19 years and worked in various companies, and I can tell you it's not easy for women to do this. And it's not because it's difficult as an infrastructure, yes, but it is more because women make it difficult for them themselves. I can belabor on this point much later, but what I'm here for, I'll share that part first, which is what I believe in. I work for an organization called AWON. We are a profit-making organization based out of various other countries across the globe. But the most important part of the reason why this organization exists is because it provides literally non-traditional source of income to women. It does not distinguish people based on their, if I could say, their personality, their education, their capability to be able to earn the money. I guess that's a very important environment that a woman needs in today's world. When I was growing up, I was told that if you don't do this education at this level, you will not reach at this place. And when I meet these ladies who work for us, and we call them AWON ladies, I noticed that none of them would have passed those barometers that were established for me, or were established for many other women in the workforce. And that gives a huge confidence to them that they're not being judged by what they have as a CV value, but they're being judged for what they bring on the table. And all they do is to make themselves capable. Result of which, and I've been with the organization for 2 years. I must have met about 250 at least of them. There are about many more than that. Globally, we are impacting 6 million women in providing this kind of a non-traditional work, and about 100 million consumers. Every time I meet them, they say that we are doing what our family believed we could never do. And because they have work, they're getting support from their family. It's like earning your own livelihood and respect along with it. And I think this is the onus of women to be able to find themselves work in whichever way, which also gives them little respect, and rest they can earn themselves. So I'll quote you in story. Do I have a minute more? Okay. I'll quote you a story of this lady I met who started this non-traditional work after being a homemaker for 15 years. So she was already in the prime of her age, where traditionally workforce, if I was to look at in a corporate or a teaching or any other traditional environment in which women work, would have never been accepted. Her situation was that economically she was doing okay, but she had no earning for her own self. Practically, and I guess this is true for every woman in every place, she wouldn't get the money beyond the diary she maintained to keep the household expenditure, which made her life extremely curtailed. And the only reason, there are many stories of people trying to earn money because they wanted to support their family, but this lady told me that I wanted to earn it for myself. And I wanted to have respect for my own self, which I didn't have for 15 years of my life after marriage. And when she started doing this work, she got confidence because she got trained. AWON takes huge amount of care to make sure that the people get trained on various aspects which help them earn more money. So when she got trained, she got confidence. When she got confidence, she could sell more. When she could sell more, she could earn more. And this kind of an ecosystem, if provided, I think every woman can do well. And it's not only role of people like them who are doing so much of grassroots work, but also in the corporate environment where we need to give this confidence to the women. Another example is in the corporate itself, in the organization itself. I think thanks to the nature of our work, we are one of the few organizations which will boast of having about 40% of women workforce, which by the way from an average is very high, but from a reality perspective according to me is low because it should be around 50%. So about 30 to 40% is low, but otherwise it's very high because I've never worked in an organization which had 40% women workforce. And when you enter the place, hope I can say that I enter with a smile in my office. And that's the reason is because the equality is known there. It's known that there are special needs that women have, but they are not looked down upon. And that's created because the organization's motto is beauty for a cause. So when you have core as a woman, it helps in creating that environment. But I'm not saying that that's the only way to do it. It all depends on how you create that environment and infrastructure to be able to give that confidence to the women to be able to come and bring out her best. And I think that's the work that Yvonne is doing in the country and across the globe. I have 1 minute. In that 1 minute, I also wanted to share that personally, I feel the reason women are being talked about here is because of socio-economic or socio-cultural norms that have been created. And if we break these cultural norms, it would come from us. If we make sure that we train somebody below us, our daughters, our family members, our environment, that they don't have to accept that women are supposed to do only that kind of work, which I think Gary was talking about. The equality comes from training from birth, I guess. And if we can enhance that training module in our own lives, there is no reason that we have to have separate programs like these for non-traditional workforce or non-traditional environment, because we'll all be in the same environment. Yeah, so that's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Swati. Yeah, and I think Yvonne is a very different kind of experience also, because it is a chain where women can work from home, but I think corporate also has a lot of other opportunity as well as challenges, because corporate as a workspace, what it means for women. Though initially we thought that after first round we'll open it up for the questions, and then every speaker will get another 2 minutes, but we are running a little bit short of time, so I was thinking maybe we open up for the floor to ask questions, and then with those questions I can add more questions, and we'll have more time for from the house to add to the discussion. So yes, please.
Archana, since there was no opportunity to talk after the keynote speech, I just want to say something, that it was really wonderful listening to Binda, a young comrade whom I have seen growing up. And I feel what she talked about, the ecosystem which is necessary to change, to challenge patriarchy and to change gender norms, is not only influencing her country, but I find Nepal is changing the ecosystem of South Asia. And that is something so wonderful. Their people's movement led by the communist parties and the Maoist parties turned a monarchy into a democracy, turned a Hindu country into a secular country, and see what our country is trying to do now. 33% reservation for women. I couldn't believe the visuals on television when I saw 33% women in the parliament in a South Asian country. We are still struggling with making it more than 10% in this largest democracy in the world. First country in South Asia to legalize homosexuality. First country here to recognize marital rape, and there are some men in jail for raping their wives. The president of the country, Bidya Bhandari, was the head of the largest women's organization, perhaps of South Asia, called All Nepal Women's Association, and she is the president of the country. I can go on and on and on about telling you the firsts they have done. So Binda, please continue to change the ecosystem of South Asia, and we'll try and learn from you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Myself Sadia. I am from West Bengal. We are working with the women's and child, and I want to ask Swati ma'am that what kind of NTL you done and your operational area. I want to know.
Hi, my name is Isha. I'm a student of Gender Studies, Ambedkar University. I have a comment to make what Swati ma'am said. While you were sharing your story about this woman who said, I want to earn a respect for myself, I also want to bring into notice how we equal respect to earning, right? Because even housework is respectable, and we don't consider that. And a lot of people are fighting for our housework to be part of the capitalist system, right? So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question for Hope ma'am. Should I stand like? No, okay. Okay, I hope I'm clear. Like you talked about the happiness thing, there are marginalization of women on various intersections, So what about the mental health, like whenever we talk about the infrastructure, we ignore this very aspect of mental health of women, because not all women belong to a category who are privileged enough, who are dealing with depression, who are dealing with anxiety, and for them the happiness is gone. Like not every person is happy. So not every company takes up this initiative to have a counseling centers, or like what like in Zimbabwe, how this mental health initiative, especially for women, especially for marginalized women coming from a poor section of society, is being taken up.
I would like to request you all that you need to request moderator for the and then only I can pass on the mic. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Then will you please help me out with the sequence? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Mashal from Afghanistan. I have one question from Mary and maybe the other friends and panel. We heard about the joining of women in non-traditional livelihood like driving and the guides and other things. In the Asia, especially in the Asia countries, women are faced too much with harassment. Are you register any harassment for drivers in Kenya? And also, you are thinking about the protection mechanism for them to have them secure, and also we can encourage other women and girls to join to this works, and also they work with common mind their jobs. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I have a question. Just anybody can address to. Like Archana ma'am said, like when we are trying to changing the rules of the game of patriarchy. So what kind of NTL, non-traditional livelihood, we can offer to the women above 35 and 40 years? Because not offering them in any way, like, we are again perpetuating to patriarchy, which excluded, because in the market economy, market feminism, what all we do is like, we are concentrating on younger women. So what about the women of 35 and above? Because we can't exclude them when we are talking about changing the rules of the patriarchy. So anybody who can answer. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Gary. It was very nice to hear about men entering into the caregiving arena. My question was more in terms of your client base, in terms of their perceptions, how they are changing. Because like Archana was saying, when women leave the homes, it is other women who fill in for caregiving. That is a usual trend, because the trust factor amongst women is also for other women. So what has your experience been with your women clients especially? Are they comfortable enough? Have they got the trust for men, like a daycare center, or elderly maybe yes, but especially for their children when they are concerned?
So I have actually two. Number one, I would like to say that Binda, it was a wonderful presentation, and yesterday also this came actually that how we can influence the political spaces, and that's something we need to learn. But I have two specific question for Gary. It's a wonderful work you are doing, and engaging men in the care work is something we need to do for ecosystem. I agree completely. But when we say the care work, so there are two kind of care work. What is totally unpaid, which is the household work, and there is something which is small paid. The very minimum amount women are getting from that kind of work, like you mentioned, that nursing, the primary teacher, etc. So if men enter in this part of the care industry, where women are really low paid, but still they are paying something, will there be a fear that women will again, they will be excluded, even whatever they are earning from that, and how to deal that? This is something a fear I felt, so that just I wanted to share. And second thing, it's not only to Gary, but the whole panel and to us, that women do a lot of mental housework when they are at home, when they are at work too. So if Gary, since we are doing a wonderful work, if the men and whoever is working with the men, if it is possible that this care work can be shared when they are in office, they will call Aya. If this is a middle class setup, then is the children has been fed up, or think of the gas will come, so I'll have to do this. So this is an area of mental housework where I think the men should enter. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to all of the panelists. I've got a big question for Gary. He mentioned male champions for change, and we've heard a lot about changing individual men's perceptions. I'm wondering, I'd like to push it up the ladder a bit. and ask you if your organisation or the movement is looking at fostering the work that actually makes the care economy count and bring it into the mainstream GDP. I know there's been a lot of work done about this, but there's also very high resistance. I think if care work were measured and accounted for, then and pulled into the official GDP, then things would have to start to change radically.
I don't have a question, but I want to tell you one small example of how this day and this event is changing me, and I hope many others. In the United States, when women want to go into the construction trades, we, as a matter of form, ask them, do you have someone at home to take care of your children? And everyone knows that we mean women. We are asking, do you have a sister? Do you have a grandmother? Because, and we say, if you have young children, if you do not have a woman at home to take care of your children, this is not the job for you right now. We never ask if there are men. And I will be home next week and we will begin asking, is there a woman or a man? Another indication of how backward we are in the West.
My name is Ferdowsi. I am from Bangladesh, working at Dhaka Asania Mission. My question is to Mr. Gary. Is care work for men is a shame? Do the men feel dignified for care work?
Good morning, I'm Mitzi. I'm from the Philippines and also from ASBay. Could you share some more on the level of participation of women in trade unions, especially for the women who are already included in the wage employment? Because I see that trade unions can really be a major component of the ecosystem of support for sustaining women at the workplace, as it serves as a voice for women to demand more for their protection in the workplace, and at the same time, women participation strengthens trade unions themselves as we form half of the sky, and thereby making it possible for more struggles to be won in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. My name is Mohamed Okasha, and I work with an NGO in Ghana called NORSAC. I'm a happy person this morning, listening to all of you, and I'm very impressed with the submission. I want to make a testimony that is from the organization Mr. Gary is coming from Promundo. We have been able to adapt most of their gender models, and it has helped a lot, whereby we now have communities where men do share these roles with their wife. We have men taking care of their children, we have men fetching water, and some even cooking. So I just want to give that credit to Promundo. But generally, I want to make a comment. And the comment is that in order for us to have a strong ecosystem, we need to have the buy-in of men. And I throw it to all of you. In all our efforts, the efforts that you are doing, how are you ensuring that you have the buy-in of men? And the reason is simple. Sometimes when you don't have the buy-in from men, the possibility of some of them fighting back is very high. And sometimes when they fight back, our efforts will be for nothing. So this is something I just want us to ponder over, and if you can respond, I'll be very happy. More especially, Madam Nandita, you have been advocating for 10% reservation for women hawkers. How is the situation? Are they not male hawkers? I just want to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to appreciate the wonderful panel and some of the, very deep issues and structural dimensions of the issues that have come up. So I'm just thinking that an ecosystem requires an architecture. It requires an architecture working on mind shift and social norm change within individuals through shifting the system of support, political, just like Bindya this morning had so brilliantly highlighted some of those aspects. How do we move towards that? How do institutions, we're all small in our own ways, we're large through our networks. How do we move through an ecosystem approach and strategy that brings both the politics, the structure, and the change together? Because only working at one end doesn't shift the system. Even we work with women farmers in rural areas through an organization called Pradhan. Women have made the shift in the families where men take on some household work when they are traveling. When they come back, the status quo perpetuates. So how do these structures shift fundamentally, and what might we all be doing to build that ecosystem? Thank you.
Sorry. Are we audible at the back also? Yeah? Yeah? If you have any questions, please, because I think we were just restricted till the 4th, 5th row, so please, we would love to listen from the back row also, and then we'll go for the speakers. Yes, please.
Good morning. I just have one question. So we are talking about ecosystems, right? And building an ecosystem. So can we consider family as an ecosystem? And how exactly family might support to have a sustainable, workplace or sustainable environment for females especially?
Sure. Anybody else? Otherwise we'll go. Yeah, please. But we have only 30 seconds.
Yeah, I have a very small question. It's not a question, rather it's a concern. I'm just thinking, when there is a very sharp polarization with the political parties and among the communities itself, and when there is no space to hear the girls and the boys, how do we incorporate and include all the inclusive voices and make a ecosystem for them influencing the political parties together? How do they work on that strategy?
Hi, my name is Caitlin and I work for Empower. I just wanted to plug, in response to that this afternoon we will actually have a session that Empower is helping facilitate, but with adolescent girls who are part of an advisory council for our organization and will be sharing their perspective. So reiterating that it's really important to include the voices of adolescent girls and boys, and yeah, we hope you can make it. It's one of the 3 or 4 really great sessions.
Thank you. We now go to our panelist. We have few questions from the floor. I think all of you will respond to those questions. I would just add one more thing, that while you're talking about and responding to the questions, please also elaborate a little bit on the challenges that you faced in doing what you tried to do. And I'm leaving for the moment the question about way forward, because I think these challenges will help us learn what are the ways forward. So maybe we leave that for everyone to think about the future strategies. But for the moment, if we can build in that also, and everyone has 2 to 3 minutes. So 3 minutes is really, really good for all of us to stay on time. You don't agree with that. You don't agree with that. No, but if you have more questions, we can give you 30 seconds more, yes.
Yeah. I guess there were a couple of questions around what kind of non-traditional livelihood that Yvonne gives to people. I just want to quote one quick research here, that women across the globe are not seen as entrepreneur by 50% of the people, and 49% of women think that they don't have money to start their own business. And given that as a fact, I think Yvonne and companies like Yvonne are giving women a chance to be entrepreneur in their own small or big way. And that's the kind of livelihood or non-traditional livelihood, if I could say, that they're getting. This was one question I noted. If there's something I missed, I would be happy to take that on as well.
A lot of the comments and questions were around the issue of whether we see that men could actually can we be competent caregivers. I think there's a lot of doubts of whether men can do it and do it as well as women do it. I think that's we should acknowledge that as a big challenge that's there. I think one of the obvious points to say is that we need to create opportunities that boys and men learn to do it, and that we get experience. Often the gatekeepers as to whether we do that are women, with lots of good reason. But I think affirming that, in fact, we can nudge boys and men to do more of these. Had the chance to partner with a vocational training program affiliated with a government in Trinidad in the Caribbean. One of the things they had as a requisite for you getting your certificate that you got a trade, whether it was welding or whatever, they had both young men and young women in it, is that boys and girls had to spend hours working in the child care center. No choice. You had to do it well. You couldn't just stand in the corner and pretend that baby didn't have a dirty nappy, for example. So I think we can figure out creative ways that boys can learn to do this. We can build this into schools, into vocational training, into what we teach at home. So I do think that is one of the challenges we have to think about, including adding to that the mental load issue. To believe that actually men can can multitask, and that we actually can be concerned and connected and learn that multitasking empathy part. I think we've got to nudge men more toward doing that. There was a question of if the care professions have been where women have had a limited voice and a chance to make some income, particularly the poorest women, how do we make sure that if we want more men in that space, we're not taking livelihoods away from the poorest women? I think that's a real concern, and we do need to make sure that we're not doing any harm as we bring men into that. But I think we've got to be brave enough to bring men into it. One of the things we know is sometimes when men come into marginalized professions, they tend to make more noise and they tend to get the jobs that pay more. So we've got to make sure that doesn't happen again. But I think we can't let that stop us from saying we need men to see this as a dignified profession as well, and find ways that together with women we raise those professions overall so that they're paid what they should be paid. The third question was around the issue of are we looking at what care means for our economies? And I think there's a couple of things that we do need to talk about. One, I would say the economic value of it. We are doing some work with corporations to help them see the cost of what happens if they don't take it into account. They have to do, particularly women coming back and not feeling supported after maternity leave are a huge cost of retraining and retention and rehiring that they have to do. So to help corporations see that, I think we've got to shift it so they also see the cost to men, and that they lose men who may, at least in some parts of the world, want to be those involved caregivers as well. So I think there's more that needs to be done there, but I think one of the things that we are showing corporations is what they lose by the worry by not having your staff fully in place because they're thinking about the caregiving arrangement that's very precarious that they have. So the cost they have of a worker who's not really fully present, and not just fully present, but happy, as we've heard as well. So I think we are doing some work to try to get workplaces to understand that cost. The final issue, and I think it is a big challenge, and someone brought up, do men feel ashamed when they do the care work? And again, the social meanings of care work. And I think there's a huge issue that we've got to talk about. The field of unpaid care is often talked about it in ways that we use the word burden. We talk about what a weight it is, a weight on women. I think we've got to shift away from the notion that care is a burden. It is our human existence. We don't live and thrive and we're not happy if we don't have it. So I think somehow that we need to give the meaning, not only the economic meaning, but the social meaning that it has. We're not trying to, as a field of shifting care work, to reduce it to zero. This is not about getting rid of care. We need it. And I think that's where we've got the opportunity to connect it up with the challenge that we know around the world of men feeling trapped in this idea of manhood, this man box that tells us to be tough, to not show our feelings, to not connect, to be lonely, to not show when we have problems. This is an opportunity to let men connect up with the other half of our emotions, to be fuller human beings. And I think we do find that when men do this, there's a positive feedback loop. Men can find meaning in this. And I think we do need a bit of optimism, a bit of humor. I was thrilled to hear Hope talk about it. Not all of this has to be men, you're not doing enough. Some of this can also be men, our lives get better when we do this. And that was the end of my 30 seconds.
I think care work in Africa, to a certain extent, was demystified by HIV. So when a wife dies and a man is left with very, with hardly any option but to take care of, his children, he has no choice but to do care work. And I think we can build on those examples, to show that indeed care work can be done. There is no mystery, about it. With regard to mental health and people whose happiness is gone. I think one of the things we've tried to do is to train feminist counselors, to train feminist, centers where support is given. And it's working, but still very difficult because there are few. But also to make feminists understand that feminism is not just about me, women, but it's inclusive. It's really looking at people, who have been marginalized. And it's work in progress, but we are seeing some changes, happening. We are encouraging coaching too, collective coaching for those whose happiness has gone, so that they can find their voices and tell their stories. And the story is not just told by the hunter, but the lionesses can tell their stories too.
I think this idea that, different people have to tell stories, and I think one of the things that didn't come out at all in our discussion is also the role of the current, what social media is doing to the mental health of young people, and that whole area we haven't spoken. I'm not going there, but I think that's whole area that we need to bring in as to what's happening to today's generation on many issues of mental health. I see so many of the girls whom I'm working with is having PTOD issues, which our generation didn't have. And I think that some of those anxiety, the tensions, what is happening in this generation needs to be looked at. And I feel that as the question that Sunita raised, what is the larger architecture of change that we are talking about, and who are the people who are going to be along with us? The kind of experience Binda ma'am shared about trade union, we don't have similar experience in India. In fact, trade unions have signed agreement with the management to let go of women in VRS, so that those jobs then can be given to men. So we have, in fact, trade unions not inclusive of women. And though women have tried to create caucuses to influence, we have not been so successful as has happened. So I think there's a huge learning that we need to do. But I think that different kinds of people have to come together to create this architecture. And somewhere we felt that even conversation with other professionals, like in our case, we felt that it was the architecture, the women urban planner, the women politician, all coming together played a certain role to shift this debate around inclusion of gender. So how do we bring these kinds of people together? Because as women's movement, we have not had that kind of a platform that multiple voices can come together. So how do we bring that? And I think to some extent, the NTL kind of a dialogue will have to bring corporates also, but corporates also have to change the way in which they're structuring the workplace. See, right now we're only just saying that, okay, include NTL or bring us on board in the workplace. But what are you changing in workplace? You know, the whole idea of flexi time, the kind of conversation that need to happen at workplace is still not happening. And then the question is flexi time only for women or it's also available to men? And that's where the question of even care work and flexi time can come in. But we are not challenging the kind of job that's coming. We are not challenging what is the market providing. We are not challenging what are we selling. You know, we are just saying, okay, get into selling. So I think this whole idea of changing the game is a much larger idea of what are we trying to take. You know, there are experiments that are happening of non-market exchangings among cooperatives. So are we talking about labor cooperatives that can happen, which is not bringing money, but you're exchanging labor of each other? Now, those kinds of conversations also within NTL we need to bring in. And I think in the World Social Forum, there were many such examples that had come of saying that we need to also create a possibility of interactions without engaging with the market and capitalism in the same way. So what kind of experiments that we can do within those, I think that needs to come in. And I just want to bring in the hawker part. This demand was done along with the Hawkers Union in Mumbai. So right now it's not completely implemented. We just got this thing passed 3 months ago. So it's not fully implemented. But once it's implemented, we are definite that there will be a backlash. And everything we are seeing, including the Me Too, there is an element of backlash that we all have to be prepared, and that's also going to happen when we are working for enhancing the whole idea of NTL. So I think that including, yes, we want to engage with men, but we also have to accept that not all men are going to agree to this change. So what is it that we are going to do to ensure that we are not going to be bowed down just because they don't agree? So what are our strategy for those kinds of ways to deal with backlash? I think that is what we need to look at.
Okay. In regards to sexual harassment of drivers and conductors, we recently did a study to help us develop the gender-sensitive toolkit that I mentioned earlier on. And the study showed that over 76% of women drivers and conductors and stage girls have been victims of sexual harassment in the industry. And they also said that on a daily basis, over 56% of them were exposed to sexual harassment. What has been happening back home is, due to the frequency of how often sexual harassment and the different forms of harassment happen, we've ended up normalizing harassment. So if it happens to you, then you're like, there is nothing that I can do. If I go to the police, They will just ask me unnecessary questions, but at the end of the day, I don't get justice. So what is happening is so many women and girls are going through harassment, but instead of reporting, are opting to be silent about it. And what we are doing as Flown Initiative is to encourage survivors of sexual harassment or any form of harassment to speak about it. And we've done this through creating of an online platform, a crowd mapping reporting platform that enables women to report cases of harassment whenever they happen. And you can do that through an SMS. You can do that through a call. You can do that through Facebook and also through Twitter. And the aim of this initiative is not just to report, but also to help map where these incidences are happening. At the same time, to help get data that will tell this is happening and this is how frequent it is happening. And at the same time, even help educate our public that this is harassment. You don't need to keep quiet about it. If someone pushes you or touches you inappropriately for you to board a matatu, that is wrong. If someone struggles to touch your thighs when you're in a matatu, that is wrong, and you should not normalize that, and you should not keep quiet. So what we are also doing to create a bigger impact is through the toolkit. We will help public transport service organizations, which we refer to them as PSV circles, to create standard sexual harassment policies for both female commuters and also for female workers. We will start doing that work this year, 2019. The toolkit it's in the final stages and to be launched in February. And we are hoping this is just the starting point for us to be able to be more sensitive to gender issues, more inclusive of women who are majority population who commute using public transportation, as well as to encourage or to create a space where women would feel that this is a place they would prefer to work, a place where you don't need to be worried about what you're dressed in, or a place where you don't feel threatened every time that you think about coming to work, and that trying to create an environment that Hope was referring to, an environment that we are all happy to go to work to. And I just want to make one quick contribution when it regards to caregiving. I want to applaud what Gary and the network of Men Engage are doing. I want to say this. It's our role as mothers to bring up children who are gender sensitive. And I will do that by giving us a very personal experience. I am married to a man who was brought up by a woman whom to her, a man, a boy and a girl were all the same. A girl would not just be restricted to playing the kitchen roles or even going to the market, but she brought up her children. She has 4 boys and 1 girl. And she brought up her boys in such a way that the boys could cook, could clean, and would even be sent to the market. And fortunately for me, I normally tell her, thank you for helping me by educating my husband on how to support me. Because to this day, I continue to enjoy the work that she did on my husband years back. Yes? So I want to encourage each and every one of us. We have a role to play, whether we are politicians, whether we head organizations, or even if you're just a mother, we have roles to play. And as someone said, the problems that we're experiencing today are mainly a creation of some of us. So we have a role to play, and let us play it well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. And I think both parents have equal role to play to make boys and girls sensitive to the gender realities. And so we are now at the end of this session, and we had such an enriching discussion, both from the panelists and from the floor. I really want to extend thanks to everyone. And just because I am moderating, I will not try to even sum up this kind of a complex discussion that we all had. All I want to say is just in the end that of course we started with an excellent note with Bindaji giving us the presentation where politics, the hardcore politics, as one part of the ecosystem where women have to create space and start changing the rules of the game, to coming down to the homes as an institution of this structure and changing what is happening there, and again changing the rule by bringing men in if women are going out. Then to the public spaces where we are trying to change how public spaces operate and really trying to see what are the different ways, and it not just public spaces in terms of transport. What Nandita really brought about, that the whole structure has to change, and what Sunita also talked, and Hope really for giving us this whole idea that happiness is ultimately that everyone is striving for, and let's not leave that in the name of anything else. So yes, we all have to come to it with positive energy, with lot of hope and happiness. And thank you, Swati. We hope corporates keep on learning and changing more, and the economy is not everything that is going to define, but how we are visualizing the new world, the changed world where everyone has potential to grow as per their choices and wishes, and not what is being set out to be for everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.
For such an engaging and interesting discussion, may I request my colleague Nikita to for a token of appreciation to the panel. This is a very rare book which is being published by Diwan, and the story of Thank you. So, thank you everyone. So I just wanted to remind that we are live on Twitter with the hashtag Women Breaking Barriers, and the Twitter handle is Foundation Azad. And let's break for the tea. Tea is served this side, and we will be back at 12:10 positively. Please come back at 12:10.